can we do a sound test with you?
Yeah.
Can Geshe speak more into the mic? So we can hear?
Oh yeah.
Good morning, Yen Rinpoche. And good morning, Katrina. Thank you for translating for us today. Welcome to everyone online. We'll begin with some motivational prayers as usual. The link's in the chat box.
To the teacher endowed, transcendent destroyer, one that's gone, foe destroyer, completely and fully awakened one, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, one gone to bliss, knower of the world, supreme guide, beings to be tamed. Teacher of gods and humans too, the Buddha endowed, transcendent destroyer, glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. When you supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you paid 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you, who are wise and I bow, who with pure bodies form supremely fine, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain. Faith that blazes in the 3 worlds, wind of the best supreme guide to you I bow. Face like spots, color like gold, do I vow. You are immaculate, the three worlds are not incomparable, wise mind, to you I vow. Great, compassionate protector, all-knowing teacher, field of merit and good qualities, vast as an ocean, to the Tathagata I bow. Through purity, freeing from attachment, through virtue, freeing from the lower realms. Unique, supreme, ultimate reality, to the Dharma that is bow. Having freed themselves, showing them that freedom too well established in the trainings. The holy field endowed with good quality, to the Sangha I vow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew, a bubble, a dream of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through this merit may sentient beings attain the state of all-seeing, subdue the full false, and be delivered from the ocean of cyclic existence, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewed Mount Meru, for land, sun, and moon. Imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you, may all beings enjoy this pure land. Venerable holy gurus, in the space of your truth body, from billowing clouds of your wisdom and love, let fall the rain of the profound and extensive Dharma, in whatever form is suitable for subduing sentient beings. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamniyatayami. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
again là Jason.
야야, 와들레 마상. 어다들. 야야, 다한테는 되도 아까 생각다. 야, 제세 친구 시월에 숨래로와. 전주 심지교나 가서 거래서. 어래, 야, 수배 동어절 심면서 동어절. 전주 심이 따서 담아줘. 전주 심지교나 깨지기에서 고외 전을 담배 냠다 남스. 대신 남지 세시 죄자시. 이제 람미제베 차결 주루세. 봐. 전주 심지교나 깨지기에서 고외 전을 담배 냠다 남. 이수리게 그래서 냠다. 대신 남지 세시 죄자시. 이제 람미제베 차결 주루세. 어디 자주기 심들랑 줄에 계속나 송교하라. 개바 차고 그래서 심지어 탐재기 더 좁통경게 그것에 윤대 군대지 강사실은 유로 차스 냠배네 멤버섬지시라 다네 죽버섬지시 니우거라 멤버섬지시도 심지어 탐재기 더 좁통경게 심지어 탐재기 더 좁에 네버 요소 쪽에 거네 현대 제통경게 강사실은 유아적인 섬야 산재지 고바 터버적인 섬 얘를 이 멤버들이야 이 타치도 라와시버들이야 멤버섬지시거라 Malam Jabe Surichirwa, Samachi, some number some years. And in Juba some years to do. Cheliani, Simja Tamja to Sanja Yukoba Toba Chavi, Teche do da Karichi was Chanjus and Betomba Sungara, Chanjus and Betomba Kalana. Nietzsche Tombe Chutum, Gawa Chudu Chutum, Simja Tonji Chutums. That Gawakari and a bed to wear. Simja Tonda condition around Tatum that letter to wear. Simja Tonji Kyochu. Nietzsche Tombe, some condition of papaya. Oh, the nigger Tomba Kalani. Sanje Yukoma to Bechido Chimba to Soba, some della soba. There's a looking in, say, Tomba the Kalani, and ya. Was Yamel and Juba telling Juba some years ago. Elangadunam Yupecha and Soguba. Oh, Pena Consaji Tomlachine. And then Jalatin you win some touches on a co. Nebadon droning about you win some touches on a. Remember some Jirat, and then Rio Mara Lagacho. A teacher la co combat de Georgia Moderna, Drona, Namduna, Docada, Dovina, Alison, Dovina, Combat Jam, Dovina, Drum, so la Tarsona, and it tells Chawa de Lomos and Jubara, Juba some years ago. O tende sem Kibas, some locoras ora, some locoras, Tabachimbe, some locora, sem Kibas. Oh, did it. Chanju sem Yakunas, Chanju said, Lana maybe Chanju Sura. Pa Chang, you then come to Kundu Chibatali Changjus. Yanduji Chanju, Rangi Chanju, Sanji Chanjus, Chanju Sumyungora, Tocha Sumde Chungora. Oh, the Chanju Simbi Gurna Ase. Oh, Teta remember some get and Juba Simbi Karuchi Rangi Kula Kesa Sona Segura. Chanju Simbi Guna Keji Kis. Chanju Simbi Guna Keji, Koetora Tambanyamtana, and Angarazun Rabuchi. Chanju similar law chance, coach Chanju some de Rangula Kesona Segura, Chanju Simbi Guna. Keji is Sim de Kebe, Keji Terranla Segura, Keji Terranla Segura, Chanju Simbi Guna Keji. Koetora Tambe, Yamtanams, Narazu Dabu, Lada Yumubo, Shamadu Junitanda Kor Tanke, Yanuji Shawajange, Kola Kordange, Ishila Rameba. In the Kansachi in a Yasagora. The Chanju same member some get a Juba Simbi Karuchi Kesona Sagora. Chanju Simbi Jona, Chanju Simbi Jona, the Rokoes or Tambanyam Danam. So Chanju Simbi Jona, Koes or Tambanyam Dan. The Shinam, you say she church ashes. And then Sanje Jum Den, the worship was the Sanje Gangal, the worship was Sigora. The Shinam, you say she should. Then Garazo Ganga, Sanje series or Chanju Sambaset, that Kese Chanju Sambasedua. The says the Bedan Kiabu, you then come to Kiabu de China. Kuranga said, Jaman Kurang Nashi Dongege Miku Teleco. And the Kasur, Kiabu says, Kiabu Drer, what did I see? And the Chanju Sam Jes not out, Sanje Combando Salam got it, Nel Lipsara. Or this the Sanje says, or Chanju Sambala. Chanju Simji Jona Kichi, Koetor Tambanyam Danams. Koetor Tambanyam Tawatanda Kora Koaba, Lanu Shawansa the Kugar. In a sim de Kesona, the Shinam says, and the main Kavarcha, Sanje Chumden Nam said, as Sanje Joe de Resagora, the Shinam says, she shows us. Main Kavarcha, the Shinam says, she shows us. And then the Shinam says, you then let me have a chaga yosa. You then get Ladan made a jab at some time Jagabe, Lanya Tamuchade, and then charge of the secure by this, one at the charge over the Karisna Kona. Then as soon the message, Jawa Kandajala, someone some jang to Limba, I live bed, touches are a Timado Meroa. You don't bet to drink your children, you should do some jet and you should do Timado Meroa. That is so in a coach charge of secure by the order over. Oh, this on that, the Shinam just says, you then let me have a charge of you, sir. Then you said a charge of urban duty. And then Ming Jen Sanjay says, Ming Cabaret to Gora. Oh, this is love, yeah.
So here, as the great Bodhisattva Shantideva has stated, should bodhicitta come to birth in those who suffer, chained in prisons of samsara. In that instant, they are called children of the blissful one, or of the Buddhas, revered by all the world, by gods and humankind. So here, in the very instant that we generate this kind of attitude of bodhicitta, so here, again, when we have this sort of attitude, thinking that, and the attitude of bodhicitta has two levels, we could say. There's an aspirational kind of level of bodhicitta, and that which is engaged, the kind of thought, thinking that may I become a being who has developed all good qualities and who has eliminated all faults, who has developed the kind of ability to be able to most fully benefit all sentient beings. When we have that sort of aspiration, that wish, I will become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings, that kind of intention, that sort of aspiration is wishing bodhicitta or aspirational bodhicitta. But then there is engaging bodhicitta, wherein you take that up via vows. By taking that kind of bodhisattva vows, you are committing to the ethics of avoiding any sort of non-virtuous or harmful action, trying to accumulate all virtuous actions and working for the benefit of all. And so once you have taken up that kind of attitude of bodhicitta in an engaging way, everything that you do, whether it is you are trying to avoid every single small little fault, you are trying to accumulate every single virtuous action, and every action that is of benefit to others, you undertake, you commit to doing the six perfections of generosity and ethical conduct, patience, meditative concentration, and so forth. And so here we can think about the distinction between aspirational bodhicitta and engaged bodhicitta, as the example is often given. When you first say, make a plan to go to the store, you think, oh, I'm going to go buy this thing at the store. You've made your intention, you've set your mind on that. But when you haven't actually started out to get it, we would call that a kind of aspiration. But once you actually take the steps, whether that is walking out of your house or getting in your car, getting in a plane, getting on a horse, whatever it might be that you need to be able to get that thing, then that becomes engaged. You are actually working towards that particular goal. So here, then, once we have this sort of attitude of bodhicitta and we take that on, our dharma becomes the Mahayana dharma, and we are striving then for this state of unsurpassed enlightenment. There are different levels of enlightenment, or changchup, the three levels being that of a hearer, that of a solitary realizer, and that of a fully enlightened Buddha. And so here, if we generate this kind of attitude, whether it is just an aspiration or the engaging level, then so this is really encouraging us that we should train our minds in that. And the instant that we generate such an attitude, as it says here, should bodhicitta come to birth in those who suffer, chained in prisons of samsara, even someone like us who is still cycling within samsara under the control of karma and our afflictions, in the instant that we generate such an attitude, we become like children of the Buddhas. And here it's using the word Sugata, translated as the blissful one, but really referring to the children of the Buddhas. And so we can, the word for bodhisattva is actually son of the victors. And in the same way that, like, if a king were to have a child and they rear that child to be able to take over the kingdom, to follow that same kind of a path, by becoming a child of the of the Buddhas, we are committed to that same path, walking along that same path. Even should we still be chained within samsara, we attain in that instant that we generate such an attitude, this kind of special name as children of the Buddhas, and are worthy of reverence by all the world, by gods and humankind. And so when someone has made this kind of aspiration, or is actually engaged in it, saying that throughout all of their lives, they are striving for this purpose of being able to really benefit all sentient beings, striving for that unsurpassed enlightenment, in the instant that that attitude is generated, one attains this kind of a special name, as well as being worthy of reverence by all the world, by gods and humankind.
Oh yeah. Oh, they do Kasura. Nagarjuna Namju Samlutana, G Kasura. That's charge of a Subata. They say, session Jusemba, Susashan Busia. And a charge of a Suba. Such tumble and nagging Jusemba. Rima Donga Razu Tabu Kaware to the Samsan Chiwarwa, or Tindumare Sunguara. Sajula Neve, Kase Chanjusan Bachibulia, Kevese Shebata, in Kebacharwa. Netan Kebachan Simje Tamje Charge of Versiturwa. Because Simje Tamje turned from Galia, Lutan Sarwa, Kevan Kebato. The charge of Versiturwa. Razum Jiden Competitioner. So, Tandal Babe and Lutan collega Chingachini, I would say it all. Or Tinashin de Simje Tamje Charge of Versiturwa. Such you tumble and Nangangi. The Sukanya Mares and Arazo Tamemba. Kwa Nyamtabe Kansachin and Arazo Tita when you get the Darcy and Darwa. Satumble and never change some day. And it can say on a charge of Versiturwa some Mares. Arazo Tamemba Chin has some Tita Buchina. And the charge of Versiturwa comes to the Chiba. Versiturwa, Geshe Yeshe and Minkabach and the Tankabach to good is. Oh, this one we are. Yeah, Tichilla.
So normally we might have this thought of like, well, those who are bodhisattvas or who really are those worthy of reverence are really high up kind of beings. We think of Buddhas or those with high realizations like the bodhisattvas that are on the grounds and so forth. But here, when we think about someone who has given up on this life and is committed fully to the purpose of others, we would see them as being worthy of reverence, as that being something worthy of our respect. And so too, we as ordinary sentient beings, beings who are still chained within samsara, should we generate this kind of attitude of bodhicitta, we, even as ordinary beings, attain the name of children of the Buddhas, and we are worthy of reverence. We should recognize that.
Oh, yeah, that is something as this assembly Shagura. Arazu Tandanashin, Kondo, Naja, Trato, Meshibe Momba. Oh, Tindre Shebishi already, Kaba Sanjay, the Kovan Jure, or some assembly or Sosolia. Oh, Tindre Mares, Tiha Kokura. Simje Tamjel, Sanjay, Rigores, Ranang Bushinatira. Simje Tamjel, Sanjay, Rigores. Arazu Tanda, Simlia, Yoyoto, to Meshibe Moba and Sangi Sangiche. Samba Gamba and Samlu Sanru Sanru Taya, everything as you Musum to Tongadoa. You then come delay, Jure Yorwa. Independent Davichina Shebata Yori, the Koshita Samlo. Sayatun Mato Samlo Mega and get in Redua. I tell you, Trons, the chair, I was the Telehagache, the way I delay Hagadua. Michizonali in a Taganashi. Tapdan Shin, Yiga Chanako, Tambo Yabumana Yar Shin. She'd have cared on Droeda. Sambucha de Sanro Sanro Droya. In the Conjure Duga. Oti Yore Segura, Simje Ranshin, said the Timanam de Luburuase. Marazo Sangma Sanje, Mama Sanje, Sange, Tezuka Sem Deda. Marazo Sem de Serik Sachibachi Yore. Conzo Sem Gikan de Changi Chaja Chan and Tarchimbare Sonroa. Shirab Tarchimbare. Sangbo Tarchimbare. Tapdan Shirab Sura. Shin Langdor Gene, Shebe, Shin Tarchin. Sangbo de Tarchin. Dagbe Shin Jebala Sobate, Sangbo Tarchin. Tapdan Shirab Nigapa. Changya, Kone Kondia Payorwa. Oti and the court so Sanko and Trocher Dagase. So was Sanje Chumden and Namjikadu in a Kusungo said the Troguara, so such Yembe Nurun of Jikaducha on some jet teacher. In Yembe Nurun Chagura, in the Sanje, Yembe Nurun Chasona Sanje Sungu said Trodore, Sungu the Chess Sungu Resora. So Sanko and Trocher dance. So was Sanje Sungu Chile, Kadu in a Samuel Kagu or Res, so soon when a day, Yemba that Nurun Chamacha. So Sanko and Trocher. The Shingi Messerda. Sanje Chumden Degi Tugi, Simgi Netan Teda, Narazo Simgi Netan Tambu Yawake Omar, Sibere. The Shingi Messerdas. Riyores, Nazo Simbate Yar, Sambutan Shen Yigachan, Yar, Yardron, Sanje Shivanashin, Jurju or Esawara. Sanje Nam Yesheba de Tambuga Ranzo, the Narzazo let Duga of Chase or the Cochang Yar on Dora. Or tea in the Razo Tisam Shagura. Marazo Samlenal. Anganzo the Kawaga, the Kawai Gurka, young Marisam, the Sosolia, Tunjun Segura, Casora, or Tene Mera Segura, the Yora. That is Sanje Rigata. Chana to Soso Sem Gitan Kanga, Mishibe Mobata, and Nembecha Kangate, 루부로 아임바 샘제 랑신 외에서도 주만은 루부로 생각 저 샘데 메다시 와라 샘코라 저 강가 용 다소나네 강가 셀 tum게 시작이 와라 랑더진에 참마 셀 tum게 샘제 저 장소나 가래 샘데 코 강가 신에 그 네바신도가 이 네바체로 체로도 바로 칠고 샘제 저 참마 다로도 네 강가 신게 와 탑게 바가 차다 참는 콜 메세바 상부장마 도시 어떤데 쉐베 뭐 교기도 와 교교 받은 알아서 단다 지대에 감을 쉐베 영경을 좀 간데도 미치소 날이나 고 삼바상에다 시럽 체중다 간데도 장장이 아치 레도 와 이무숨도 두고도 와 그래서 팀마데 코도에나 코도 총으로 둬야 봐 나게나 나게 총으로 둬야 봐 차도에나 차도 총으로 둬야 봐 띵아저 하고요 당기와 말왕 알아서 그 kum시지가 고 단다때 연대를 지니 삼을 단대요라 코도 사부체는 같이 인도들지 멜리아 경계의 소럽시다라 신자 어디인데 뒤삼을 샤고라 소소데 야제지 땅에 예산 소소 셈데 메다지 예삼사 딩아저 프레제날 용도 딩오네르제도 셈레 하고 자신부 매체로 이신 노부다 위에서 소소 셈데가 소소 양이 가봐게는 게도가 셈 상하로 치는 상부 가와이나 셈 상부에는 쫄람 상부체 대신에 야르노라 셈 gem바에는 쫄람다 가가정 야르마도라 어때인데 내서 삼루단데 가서 셈게 내단데 삼루단나 셈데 이신 노부나시레 샤서라 소소 셈레 소소 차차고 버리시레서라 이신 노데 셈레 차차로 서도 gem바지 제나 고 소소 셈레 도와줘 요마데 감송나 셈레 직바시가 마 다시나 제슈데 제사데 셈데레서 와라 셈 독자게 와게 미치다 몸다 사야데 강가 연구도 와 현대 강가 사토나 시 두시샤 연구도 와 셈게로 셈게라 어때인데 가르쳐라 도가지 전에 셈레 도가지 와 말에 감송나 셈레 직바시 나라주 밀레 직지라 밀레게 지에 메데코피가 셈게 가르치스네 티체 우도라 셈 되서나 메든 되도라 르당아데 셈게 때려지라 르당아게 쳐바데 셈게 샤완데 줘그라 그 셈 되서나 르강이 되도겨라 어때인데 그 초치네 삼르다나 셈레 도가시 와 말에 감송나 셈레 직바시 직방군에 계서도 셈레 직고요라 어야 어디질랍도 뭐 도체서
So here, I think it's important that we hold in mind. I mean, we as ordinary beings, we have things like anger and attachment and pride and jealousy and so forth. And we might sort of have this thought of like, well, how can I become a Buddha? Look at these afflictions that I have. We have this sense of ourselves as being sort of stuck within the kind of afflicted state we are currently in. But we should remember that all sentient beings have Buddha nature. They have the capacity to become fully enlightened. We have the ability to remove all of our nescience, all of our not knowing, all of our ignorance, and to develop qualities to a limitless degree. And so we can see, like, consciousness has this kind of capacity, and particularly our human consciousness. I mean, animals have the ability to know things, but they're rather dull. It's not as though they can like improve that kind of understanding very much. But when we look at humans, we can see, looking in society, the ways in which through effort people can increase their understanding. They can develop their mind, their knowledge, and so forth. And so looking at the kind of quality of mind, as it is said, the nature of the mind is clear light and the stains are adventitious. As in, we have the ability to develop our understanding, develop our mind, really to go to this highest point in which we remove all of our faults, develop all of our qualities, have the ability to know without exception all of the points of what is to be adopted and what is to be abandoned. This is the nature of mind, and we all have this kind of capacity if we make an effort at it. And so, as it is said as well, the perfect Buddhas pervade everywhere, as in the enlightened activities of the Buddha's speech is all pervasive. There isn't sort of like a place in which that doesn't go to. And here, then it is said that when we think about the nature of the Buddha's mind, lacking any kind of intrinsic or inherent existence, and the nature of our own mind, there is no difference between that kind of fundamental nature. So there's coming from the Uttara Tantra that suchness is not differentiable, as in our mind is the same nature as the Buddha's mind, and we might think like the Buddhas are over there, but really the Buddha began as like even worse than us, right? We shouldn't have this kind of attitude that is self-deprecating, self-disparaging, thinking like, how could I possibly do this? How could I possibly develop and change my mind, as if we are stuck in the way that we are? Because it is possible through working with, through developing our mind, we can remove all unknowing, all nescience. And the mind is such that we can get rid of those faults that are in it. There is the capacity for omniscience, for the capacity to know all of the points of what is to be adopted and what is to be abandoned. If we put good things, positive things in our mind, we can develop in a positive kind of direction. And if we put negative things in our mind, we can see how we will go downhill as well. And this is something that we can establish directly for ourselves, looking at people in society. It's not as though they are fixed. If someone makes an effort, they can become less angry, they could become less hateful, less prideful, and so forth. But we have to first have a recognition that those are adventitious kinds of defilements, stains that we might want to get rid of. There are some people, for example, who might think that their, say, their attachment or their anger is actually somehow beneficial or protecting them, helping them. We think our afflictions are positive. But when we come to recognize the faults of those, we can recognize that they also don't penetrate the nature of the mind. The mind is something really special. Our mind is like a wish-fulfilling jewel. There's nothing more precious than our mind. We have the capacity to improve that limitlessly by putting positive into our mind. There's nothing more powerful than that. But on the other hand, there's also nothing as scary as the mind. It isn't as though the sort of like actions and speech of others come independent of the mind. Rather, they follow after the mind. The incredible destruction, like killing millions of humans and so forth, the incredible hatred that we might act out comes from the mind as well. And so when we think about it, the mind is like a wish-fulfilling jewel. On the positive side, we can develop it infinitely into the positive direction. And if we put bad things in our mind, there's actually nothing worse, more fearful than our own mind. So this is something that we should keep in our mind, is that we have this kind of capacity, that the nature of the mind is clear light and these stains are adventitious. If we make an effort, we can see the kind of improvement in our own mind.
Oh yeah. I didn't do my Sunday, but some good work. Just so you turn that. The question major scenes, the office on somebody. Rank 70 also didn't Sunday temple and so. Sunday jump then you then can't pay anything, the card then girls and she shared the car share with a shepherd, the Susan Yamsul and the car share words and some dual good. Some jump with it. Mishibe Mumba to the Churton, Lando Shembache. Oh, then it tapped the neighbor, Condonga get to the Abu Doa some. That's about new to Tangitangache. It's a John Samluta. We need to Samluta, Shirp tickets, oh, Samluta. Oh, take your Reshatia woman to Tirashaka and they go to some Pashagisha, Yaga, the Suzulangilichan. Shirp da. You get Samluta and it's Samba neighbor to the Churchuta doa. And then it's some dear to Yara. Some days on the run, the Cholam de Yardu Yore. And the shell and Tawacha that the Zukanga de Yotura, Condonga Jetados. In the rank is simply also the Dennis Sanjay Temple essay. You don't have so good. Same do na. Cholam Sawata, Sawapan, Sambucho, the idea to tap the shit of Sido. Shit of the Samlut along to the Actima, the Terrace Hakwatch. You again, Lunga, Chobang, and Butters of Power, shall never the Pasha, and but the two troops. Tap the shit of your son to do the ya and the Drogodoa. You know, Samluchi Karatan Gursena. So, but Shirap ta, Chixet to the Kaga, Comet to the Kaga. Kasi Komba Yena, Yarke, Droya, the Karcha, Kache, Kumji Cheva in a teacher, you could out, never church, Droyara. In Droya, you were the Samlutan, thing on the Samlutan Mara. Whereas Karina, Namju Karina, Sambang Embashin, Tara, Shacheva, Embashin, Tara, Shangara, Rangin some Tagachigo, some Shasha Mato. Dingan Jurju Chitana, Jurju Tanya, use some sort of Medua. Or take Jurju Tanya, the Karche, or say Yana Yando. Contra Rachi Mabas open that thing on Zungusum to Trukua. Tawari Seva Comian, what is Subuena. And the co Chizonachi on the Otasava comes a issue something that there is a trout round Rayora. Myself, there is a Condus on the Condusaya Koran Capture Session and the Condunam Junashita. Or they have women some copa, Mamso, Tapsi, some Lutana, Udura. Zandingazo Sangbe Chata, Shirif Jachani, Kari Nate, Yane and the Kumji Chena, One Condon Drea, Mado, Sejan to Tambu Nashi, so Duga Kari, and Shirif, the Momba, Sambo member Kari Chena, till Degma Rechera. Dingazo Samlo Kogodoa. Considering Dungama is Samuel and a Pewach Suda. Rangi Ringama Combalet and Yane and the Kumji and any Shukcher Akendwara. Timado Cheke Yomara. Samba Sanrota, the Shirif Children, man said, Shadachi Yomara. So Chanye, the Kumdiches, the Kaze Combo Chabate Sambi, Sejan to Negma Rese, Karachi, Yagen Dram, Shiomara, Kaze and Yagen to Tegris. What in this is some locona? Nisanje Kova said the Tobia Yore Samsa. You can say you then couldn't say Yore Samsa, so some de Tadabato, Nambacholo Combomato, Sambucholo Kumdichun, and the Kenchabe Sambena, and so chick. San Jagri, Sekin could say you then couldn't say Condusay, maybe Chaya Yore. Tados, maybe Chaya Yore said, oh, Chimetro Samsa Tandua, or Tis some Lutangura. And there's some Lutano Sanje Kova says that she cover. Tab the Shiro Mika Yagelia, say Mabachia, Drea Yobachi Yovati, tennis, so some quarter, now when she Tabshi Chekutu, some quarter, or a teacher like that.
So here, the purpose of the teachings of the Buddha, I mean, the reason that the Buddha came into the world, as we see in the verse that we just recited, that do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only virtuous actions, subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. So the Buddha came into the world and taught us. He showed us through the kind of practice that by seeing the faults of the afflictions, that by seeing the sort of actual nature of things, the way that things are. So we have both the method side in terms of our actions that come out of it and our understanding, the wisdom side of things. We can learn to work on our mind, to actually tame and subdue our mind, to eliminate those things that are faults by seeing the faults of the afflictions and then actually trying to put our minds to something positive based upon our understanding, that wisdom side. We then engage the method. So our actions are, if we want to eliminate all of those non-virtuous actions, we need to have the kind of wisdom that understands the way that things are, as well as then the kind of method that follows out from that. So here, when we think about practicing, whether it's practicing patience or wisdom, however much we engage our mind with that, we develop that further. So often we might have this sense of like, I don't know if I can change. We just sort of allow our afflictions to remain as they are. We allow our mind to remain as as it is, thinking that these things are somehow like unchangeable. But we can see that if we say, start to be patient in every single situation, we're always trying to bear with whatever comes, we are going to get more and more patient, right? But if we allow ourselves to just remain as we are, thinking like, well, I'm an angry person, and you just get angry and allow that to come up every single time, then that's not going to improve. We're not able to develop our mind. So we need to, again, always combining this method and wisdom, having an understanding of the way that things are, and then actually implementing that in our mind. As it is explained, that our mind is dependent upon the habits that we form, the types of like previous minds that we have cultivated. So this is the only way that we are able to develop the mind, to actually develop it to the point where we have where we can eliminate all faults and develop all good qualities. Now, it can't be given to us by someone else. We can't take some sort of medicine to do this, but rather it is through our own mental development. If we actually have a sense, oh, if I work on my mind, I can get rid of my attachment. If I try to, I can eliminate my anger and so forth and actually implement that. Again, this is the real heart of the teachings of the Buddha, the reason that the Buddha came and gave teachings.
어디인데 대주 강가 가르소랑 고르 주두자 소수능민에 주고도 대개 신부래도 먼저 심제 탐제에서 이제 현대질 유배서를 지키기도 현대를 개인적하게 요마로 소수능민 남유대에서 지소를 가르던 존재 지기는 능민에 손대 장바다 저와도 진행 고쪽으로送거도 당용도 지는 대산의 매 고마신게 지소 고마신게 도스는 가실 가부 가실 도 지고에 가요래서 진행 고쪽으로 이제고 콘도를 지나 콘도 깨다 저거 콘데 배에다 대서 삼로 다 싫어게 어다 콘도세 제대나 소소 미지 능미 미지 야고 메도 삼사 삼로 다네 근데 그 저거 공기 전에 야르야르도 공기 숨 제주리데 야르야르 이거때 대나시 타도 제단 전심 제다시 소소 나시 소아디 그들이나 그거도 소소 대화들 통해 면도바르치 면도바치나 기부 영어 말이 대나시 파조들의 삼고라 당시 당이 면도바다 샹라 베자오서고도 나 소소리아 가르치는 야부 소고도에 가르치는 가보면도에 이 삼을단 파조들 라나시리다 이 삼을단 소고도 근데 소아대요는 아니 가리나 교주 당이라 소소대 개침부 시부지치 면도 동해지 면도 강가 공개 파조대 사도나시 가르치나 never change and don't go ching some time any yo marwa dura tada sito sile dura sira some seto sile dura atinde ko kashi dani mendo bate da shan la me chaos yi choa de gora ajo de tawa de donghe nyoge sire san ta ga su sun gwe ne yawa ma chu ne donghe te ne de ba re sam bra me ji shen me ji sun sa nang mi ne go chu se de ko ju abu do ngarajo simje tamje dewa da de jo se gre kawa simje tamje kyo dewa da dewa dena samsa tunge tena samsa simje kare basne jo chu se ke yo mare chanda do me ba chili te ke yo mara o te de jo sam li shao do ka shi tani me do ba te da shan la me chao so de du de ra dewa do la tunge me do ba shin do shen dewa do la tunge me do ba chung ba re sa ta shen nyam je ko ne chi de ra ke tunge se je ba shin do shen ki tunge se je re rāngi tewa dhūpja yinpa shi shindā te dhūpja rēsi te samla tōng sōdā gali nī tāng shenjam dhūrā rānda chikpa rēyā sam tītū nyāngi chikpa rēyā sam samla kō yungu rā o tī yindu kō tī kēshimbu rē o ya o tī yindu kār sū rā tā tōndā chanchū gu sim sē tā shimbu chē te shiānla tsawā pāngya shiānla chāmbātā tsawā sē de rā 잠시 니비데 고네 공도 페데니 장주 셈다 산제 고반 토베데 강가 용구도와 제동에다 데나 서샬라 소 메시 삼사 와 야와다 데나 삼차베 셈다 닝지 셈데 자와세데 어디 삼로 고고다 가시 닝지 세데 장지 셈제 마르질 닝지 케베스도 삼로 고고다 이마라 수이나 고 레던 유문봉하게 고하고 동에 용다게 이나 아가티 만디데 테데 데나 삼초라 가지 소설에 누가 진행지 텐데 게 말와 디데 가르소래 디데 한영지시데 신다지 소설에 도와라 지는 많이 지 삼비오 말아 술레네 동에디 매네 하고래서 동에 매고 삼사네 인시 심제 탐별 요소라 가가리아 강에 여베 디다 매나 삼고라 가가라 톰데 그때와 탑두데 톰나 삼 잠바다 저 요소라 디데 가서라 어떤다 잠바다 저 낭민에 고추네 간시다니 메도바다 샹라 메차오세 이 안에 공도야 빼네네 심제 탐제 그 더럽던게라 통만 매번에 라게 치슈집에 노르샤삼 다시 게 치슈집에 삼 딱베 신집에 장주고 심세데 깨지 요요사레 삼 장기이나 시세데 삼장 삼리 코나니 심제 탐제 산제 고바토 버샤스나 삼리 코르 토우라 어텔이 앞에 에바 망보 칼레 겸네 소소 셈기 춘데 대야르와 메다바레 풍부 시기 셈데 고 양겐다 망보제 미제 던루제지데 셈레 주와도라 이나 고 셈데 다바리스토 대야르와 하메바시 대야르와 이데 고 케바 망보 칼레 겸 고제 칼레 겸구나 야르 타제 Becha, Togato Pangi Pangi, Yagoto, Sound Tangi, Tattoo, Yokose, then Kundesi, you are checking some chosa, you remember some down. Kasha Yan said, Denny Rana check some Simshu cotton, Telegan Yabodoa, some cotton, the day Samata. I think the members of Yuribu Samutana, Takarichen and Macha Kazangona Magona, Yagaya Ketanja, Yokose, you then Kundeji Kansa, ya. Tungele tendo Tabach, some of the Samuch Kokoda. Oh, into that and that. Tungeta Jawada, Simja Tamjaka turn to Tungege. Sanjay Kovanchi Chinet Tovar Chasam. The Eshedoani, Tenature Sanjay Sobechu, and the Dandangadu, Gobuludu, somebody around and Jitua. Julia Tobata Samba Combe Rimjichen. Sanjay Kovanto Bech, to Chigi in Samsa. Gunu set and the Samba shoes, ya. I didn't do it.
So, therefore, when we think about this kind of capacity to change and develop our mind, when we are thinking about sort of this attitude of bodhicitta, which is based upon love and compassion, we really need to start with our family, with those who are around us, with those with whom we interact in society. So here we use our intelligence or our wisdom to see the faults of things like anger. By seeing the faults of anger, seeing how it is damaging, and recognizing the benefits of patience, for example, we're able to, on the basis of that wisdom, then develop a kind of method side of that, develop our patience, such that we are able to eliminate our anger, reduce our anger. This is something that we can see directly based upon our own experience. And so here, when we think about the kind of developing love and compassion for other sentient beings, this should really be based upon this understanding, as it is stated in the sutras, that like what we would not want done to ourselves, don't do that to others, right? If we just see ourselves as being the one sort of conscious, animate being and look at other sentient beings as being sort of like sticks and stones, as if they were inanimate and unfeeling, we act in a way that is really worse than like lions and tigers and other sort of wild animals. But if we have this recognition that in the exact same way that we don't want to suffer and that we want to be happy, every single sentient being is exactly the same as that. And so therefore, we don't want to cause suffering for another sentient being. If we can come to this level of appreciating the happiness of others and so forth, then we really enact that through our interactions with others. If we're just sort of sitting there saying all sentient beings, but we can't actually even point to a single sentient being, then how are we going to practice, right? And so we should have this sort of attitude that just in the way that we don't want to experience suffering, we'd like our suffering to be eliminated, every single sentient being's suffering is something that is to be eliminated. And just as we want to be happy, every single other sentient being has that desire for happiness. And so bodhicitta, this attitude is based upon developing those mindsets of love, of wanting others to have happiness and compassion, wishing them to be free from suffering. And it's important here that when we think about compassion, we don't think of it as being just for those beings that are like below us somehow, that we have compassion for those that we really see as abjectly suffering or as being lower than us. But really, every single sentient being who is cycling within samsara is deserving of compassion. Whatever sort of state they might be within samsara, they all are subject to the pervasive suffering of conditioned existence. And so with these kinds of attitudes of love, thinking whoever we encounter, may they have happiness, and compassion, may they be free from suffering, this is the way in which we begin to enact that in our lives. And this, again, is infused with the kind of wisdom that recognizes that since beginningless time, I have been holding myself as most important. And really, this kind of self-cherishing attitude is the source of all of my faults. But this isn't something that is fixed or determined, but rather I have the capacity to become a Buddha. We can see see with this sort of long-term view that our consciousness, we can take different births, but if we improve our minds, if we develop that consciousness, we have the capacity to become a fully enlightened Buddha. And so, some have longer term kind of a way of thinking, but we should have, taking even just the life that we have right now, recognize that we're going to use that in order to improve our minds, to develop our good qualities, and to eliminate every fault that we possibly can, with this sort of long-term goal that however long it may take, I will by any means necessary become a Buddha, one who is able to really give genuine happiness to others and help them to remove and eliminate their sufferings. And for that purpose, I'm today going to be listening to these teachings by Nagarjuna on the precious Garland. So please set such a motivation for listening to these teachings, again, grounded in understanding the reality of how we go about practicing in our day-to-day lives.
Oh yeah. Ang zo de인다. 삼제. 쇼로가 고지 고니 들어와.
굽주 고칙 마르베.
고지. 야, 어인지 되게. 고지 고지.
싱미 땐라 잠보다.
고지 고지 들어와.
예선발.
아,
고
된대. 야, 어야. 이래서. 근데 따져 노래. 어야 된대. 야, 고지 되다. 아야. 이 간도서나. 신이 땜반 잠보 다세. 다 교디 쉐요라. 지 개ව 망볼이야. 지 땜바. 그뒤에 땜반 마야. 소소 초다 마초다 된대 초 많이 마셔. 내 영혼에 가리네 땜바 시줄라베 됐어라. 개바 망보 땜베 시마와데. 칭네 땜바. 잠보다 안에 치 잠볼라야 메리아 치투부 말라셔. 내주 가리네 고 야가도 도 가가셔 용구라. 이나 고 셰도자 고칭 잠보셔셔. 근데 말이 된대리 지지셔파. 니보셔지 봐 셰데 시고라. 칭 잠보셔야 돼. 치투부 밀 포도 용게 건데 내가 전에 그래서 또 셰곤 또도 콜리 포보 셰고라. 근데 멤버제 고치 만디부지 셰네 라가 텐텐멘도 또들어 봐셔. 야부지 셰네 고 만디바 하고는 하고라 고 메라네. 팅엔디메도 삼산데 소토라. 어떻게 들으스네 디그라. 근데 만디르라 마치만에 근데 무시해요 말세르단 디그라. 야베톤데 셰요라 가가. 너 텐데 개바 망보 셰발레 테네시오라. 신의 땜반 잠보다 요린 도수 줘봐 예세. 교디로와. 아니 미원본 자양신에서 아니 즉 전에 송여대 제도조 까보고버렸 텐데 내가 양부제 배cep자 되버서라는 거죠. 계제도 세분 잠부 야부시에 통계시오라. 미원부 자양신 자수도 제대시오라. 자양보다 아니 상배에네 양대주 송도주 고보다 산계 송라 다 되네 셴나 가가 고통계로 아니 송 년보다 지금 약보 다른 물로 고통계 아무네 전에도 송진이도 송나 도만이도 소소소 깨를 건데 이 송셔도 강같이 건도 와라. 근데시 야 되래. 근데 송아서 상바에네 양대 요르세. 꾸지 되래. 야 되시.
So I had thought we'd left off at verse 91 or 191, and Geshe thought it was 192, but we're going back to 191 just to humor me. So here it says, and again, this is describing the causes that lead to these particular signs. So having spoken truthful and gentle words for a long period of time, you will have a broad tongue, liege, and your speech will be Brahma's sound. So here, having for a long period of time spoken truthfully in accordance with the way that things actually are, not speaking deceitfully or trying to mislead others, and also in a kind of kind and gentle way. I mean, sometimes we as ordinary beings have the desire to correct someone who might be doing something wrong, but maybe we do so in a way that is intending to inflict some kind of harm, like make them feel bad for what they have done, for example. Whereas there's always a way to tell someone that they are not acting correctly or acting properly in a way that is gentle, that is kind. kind, that isn't trying to inflict that sort of harm. So here, this kind of speaking truthful and gentle words for a long period of time leads to, and here he is speaking to the king, so liege, you will have a broad tongue. So having the kind of ability, like this broad tongue, also means that he's able to speak in a very clear and kind of compelling manner. And your speech will be Brahma's sound. So the Buddha's speech has these particular qualities of being very pleasant sounding, being able to travel very far, having the ability to speak to individual beings in their own language, and so forth. And these are the kinds of causes that lead to that.
Oh yeah. Also look how could you go nidra. Tado Jumi Chebaro, Tembe signature by Yeshe. You Tado Roy Rumbune. Net sick Temba Kaja Temba Jamatochi. Rancho de Sencho that she so suit and that we had the condition myself. We need to the shape we are. Tado Jumi would nature one kind but the Temba Tambo Temba Koran, Tembali Yishi, Temba Tambo Shed. Tado Jumi Cheba Kyo Mambulia. Yeah. Tembe signature by Yeshe. Temba Mato Chinle Sot in the Mashavishe. Dramba Sengeta Butas. Some with the Dramba to Sengi Nashipa. You are the same. Pande Tubakawa, you Tukawa. Shendaji Tukawa said. Oh, today. So we didn't do them in the Chemetova. Nazunam June me Sengi Sanjeta to the Sengi Sengi Dagua. Because Seguras, Negati Rudash Elia, you put him a good bandage. Inashi, the Tawasan, the others in the motive, but to the Mambuyora, or today, and the Sanji from the to the shoot it to the sing it up to the Capsidoa. Ruda Sengiti, Ruda Kiabush, Yase Rudash Elia, you come here with ticket, and any Shandasuba, she won't get his ora. You know, could the basic mouse on that. Sanjay soon the Jibameba Macho we said that I should tell you, Sangi chat. We nature than too much shaggy or mother teacher, my engaged shane, my bachard in the Kay or Marwa. One after never nice shaggy or a Yishaneko, Sangita Bose. Motivate our shandal, love getters like you can make what they said. In the Tundara. Oh, the Jimmy Chava, and bed signature by Yeshe. Dramba Sengeta Buddha, Pande, Tubako, Shangi Tubako. Challenge Shum Chembakuba. Temba Shangete Chitana Redoa. Is it Tembashe and a compare Abuja Shechura? Is he shaking the touches and a calico chemo with something? So Tagata gets the shake with Sigura. Oh, teach and Sigura. Oh, yeah, teach like
So then going into verse 192 or 92, through always and continually uttering words that are true, you will have a lion's jaw. Glorious, you will be undefeatable. So here, again, for a long time, speaking in a way that is truthful, that isn't for like some sort of self-benefit or trying to harm others. You're never speaking, a Buddha doesn't speak with any kind of ulterior motive. But here, through speaking truthfully over a long period of time, never sort of speaking out of self-interest, this leads to then the result of having a lion's jaw, or sort of like a lion's face, and being undefeatable. And so this is like having the kind of form that you can't compete with. And so here, when we think about a lion is sort of like the king of the jungle, or the king of the other animals, and that they're fearless in the face of whoever else it might be. They're the lion. They're sort of in charge. And so too, when they say call something out or roar, all of the other animals will sort of be afraid, but they don't have any kind of fear. And so too, a Buddha speaking truthfully and speaking in accordance with reality, the way that things are, they are sort of like like a lion in the face of Tirthikas or non-Buddhists, and that there's this kind of fearlessness based upon their being grounded in truth and so forth. And so often we see, because of this symbolism of the lion as being sort of like the king or in charge or not having fear of any others, that there will be on thrones and so forth this lion. We can think about this in our own experience of when we are speaking truthfully, there's no fear there, there's no trepidation. We are speaking in accordance with reality. Whereas someone who is lying, there's always going to be a kind of fear and a sort of like, oh, am I going to be found out? But for someone like the Buddha who speaks in accordance with reality that they have realized, there's no fear. There's sort of like this lion-like being undefeatable.
Yeah. कुछ कोसों दे बा अकबर कोई ना कुर्ती दास शैली अकबर कोई शब्द ना चबाता कुर्ती सुने शब्द से रोबा चेयर डॉक्टर जिधर रिबर चेंज हो गया सब अजो दिल कजे रोबा डब से को तिम्बा चेको को ना तीन ऐसे चबाल के ने सरा जिधर रिबा चेंज हो गया तेरा चेसुन जो गया चावा चबा इम्बे यानी सेमने शिंदो कारो दास सेम दिसे वाला सो दिसे वाला कार्बोशिरादा ने दोंदे दो याबो ने 냠베 치수주를 대대고 거기에 파교 수조면 빼빼 냠바 전에 봐 원에 냠바체 아니 수 단지 부추 동범에 같은 데서 거라 냠베 치수주 도인데 냠바 그 냠바 제 파조 냠바다 아니 버루 동범에 같은 데서 냠베 치수주 야 되질라나.
And then in 193, through behaving with respect and service in the appropriate manner, your teeth will be very white and lustrous. They will also be even. So here, however, it may be necessary to serve others, to show them sort of respect and reverence, or to give them a service. Doing that in whatever way is appropriate leads to the result of having these teeth that are very white and lustrous. So they have a nice kind of color, and they are also even, like evenly spaced. None of them are sort of crooked or kind of twisted in any sort of way, no spaces in between them. And so this is the then result of behaving with respect and service in the appropriate manner.
Oh yeah, I did it. And 참만 해봐 예스. 아주 그 인쇄야 되는데서라. 근데 참만 쉬어야다. 아주 조신께야 tumba 메tum바 써야 되는데서라. 이네 유리 공부 예스. 어딘데 마셔지 고 남진은 아주 tumbe씩만 와서. dumbe씩만 와서 되는데서와. 근데 샘네 쉬죠. 참 냠바 다 내가 냠바 타자 상어죠. 어디 되는 반대 시네 샘들에 십주서 따들은 이슈제 어들은 이슈제 단지 부셔 되시거라. 냠바 타자 상어죠. 지금 냠보 아마다 이슈제 아니 그 냠보다 타상 부서 또 단지 부대서도 또 동바르던데 매스파타
And then in 94, having become accustomed to words that are true and not divisive, you will have glorious teeth, 40 in number, set closely together and excellent. So here, having again become accustomed to words that are in accordance with truth and that are not divisive, as in the way that we speak, where we might say something to create a kind of division, to create strife between others. Speaking without that for a long period of time then leads to having these 40 teeth. So a Buddha's teeth then would be 20 on the top and 20 on the bottom, and they're set closely together. So there's no sort of space between them, and there's sort of smoothly no unevenness or any kind of spaces between them.
Oh yeah. Chagda, Angda, Mongme Shese, Chagbe Koneta, Sheda Koneta, and Mongba Mebe Koneta. Chambe, Simjen Towers, Natunda, Simjen Vatana, Namjunga, Junjuna Suban Sirwa. Mika Simjen Tana, Transi Chambe Suji Tas. Nagarjuna Mikashe in now do Yabu such Kashe Lesson, Kuyabume, some Kanga Yabuda, to the Parma, the Mambuche Tagora. Then when there's any Simje Sultana up, but Chambe Suji Bata, so something when Sula Auntie to Yamu in the Madavice. You basically Transi Chambara. You do want to say, oh, the Andola to me, Medovasim, rather Chibaris in Basis. She saw she some such a Yabuja for Chambesim to die or what in the tower is over. Oh, Chada, Tanga, more major, Momba Melvin. Chambesim Jen Tower is. I do in a Simja Shella Tada, make a Simja Tada. Make a Simja Tana, Transi Chambe Sujitas. Marazun Damidra Mabuse Kago, Yana. So short of Chayana, member Chayana, Tasha Yimiji Chegura. When the Sen Chase your market, just say near the Tekanga Tagalagre. So Casa de Chichi says that to say. Ichamada say your mother. Imagine a share to order. What in this year, Marisoda? Any culture, Jenny, fractions of Chandy, the Joy. Simjan Shannon, and Butata make it Tatan the Yabuchan, right? Somebody say it on the tower dig any change, fractions, Siji chant in the right. Dobe Yabo. Fractions, 20 times. Make it so that you have to do good work. Because Umbo thought you miss. And the cousin, Zima by it. Change Zima to put to Madribish, Palando to Nation, Madribish, so you are this. I do that.
So then, from gazing on sentient beings with love, without attachment, aversion, or confusion, your eyes will be sparkling blue with eyelashes like a cow. So here we should look upon others with love. We should look upon them sort of in a way in which we see them as pleasant, whether it is whoever it might be, whether they are our enemy or our friend or someone that we are neutral toward. We should really try to see them as wanting to have happiness and as equal to ourselves in that way. Now, normally, the way that we look at others is with kind of suspicion. Some people we see as being like unpleasant, and maybe it's not even something that is actually a fault of theirs, but rather a kind of projection that we are making. We tend to see the faults of others quite clearly, even if we don't see our own, and not have this way of looking at them with a genuine sense of love, of compassion, and so forth. And so here, Buddha, from looking or gazing upon sentient beings with love, really seeing them as pleasant, seeing them in such a way as you want to want them to have happiness and want them to be free from suffering. This leads then to having eyes that are sort of sparkling blue, that have a special kind of quality to them. And eyelashes like a cow. So the kind of eyelashes are individual, sort of distinct in the way that like the eyelashes of a cow are, not sort of mixed together.
Dakasa make a Simjeta, Trash Ambassador said, Nabukasi was the what and then some Simja condition, oh, could take them by show some Tatan the Abudwa. Tugumachuna, some Stevene Abudwa, so Kawasagora Sholia. Oh, this you are. Jambata, Sevecone, Tatan, Simja Sutoma in there. And ruin at the mean and the suinet, the what and then us, to make the trainers. To make Chambungo, she told Sonata Tileja to make the manners of the law. The what and then by she could put some sober the Tonsonat, Chesu Irachi, or the Gaku, the what and the other. The Mandra shows, Nazusim Jetum, the what they were and then by Chustera, to make the charges, to make maybe tops and better the Mandra. Call a person sober the career net, and when they said there, there's a person of net, persons of a new persons of a longer person of a donut, they could tell them go. On the gas on Koyabu Dash to the Mandra Juji, some neck order Dora. Do it, Tagi Kadu in the Kawasai Chora. Around do it, someone the wishes that Yagachi to the Trado Chigichi, and then to the Dressim Chigichi, the Doshara. Te kabandona tagi nyengi pa tikwa sagi do sharo. Inde membership sungdo. Simje pa condition tanako. Yawadan dena yabudu samda chesurase. Which do not to get a trainer some the Shena. Data Medrena some the Teatan Debatuna. Oh, Tindation, the Keba Mamutindeta, and it has some Butinda Dugara. In a razor, Tinder some Gora, Sansan Dube, Kurkuja, some Tindetanate, hey, you some Gura. Yeah, I think this one. At the nation look at Kujukudu de Ra.
Mhm.
The Dara Donna Hoda love Shandis. Yeah.
Yeah,
Then
yeah.
Donna Kurjebe, some Jutani. The Dane, that's good, some Jutani to the Sherwa. Kibu Senge Chamboye, Sanam Lebar Kimba Jose, or Kibu Senge Chabotas. Alayatani Chibacham Begobadwa, Yantak Panet, Baposa, or the chance of Justanity, Kimber Jose, Gudwa, Tibo Dolosana.
So here, if we are to go around looking at others with this feeling of like, oh, may they have happiness, may nothing bad happen to them, maybe be freed from any kind of suffering. When we see others who have something excellent, who have something good, we can rejoice for them, thinking, may they not be parted from this thing that is giving them happiness, that is giving them joy. And if we actually see other sentient beings suffering, we can think, oh, may they be freed from this suffering. So here, if we like are going along looking at other sentient beings in this way, we have the capacity to, just as we're walking along, to be accumulating a great deal of merit. But instead, most of the time we are walking along in the way that we look at others as creating non-virtue. Like we feel jealous when we see someone who has something nice or who has good things. We feel some sort of competitiveness with others and so forth. We might disregard their suffering or be upset at their happiness. And so rather than that, if we are able to, just in the way that we look at others, that we feel toward them, when we see someone else who has something good, who has something excellent that is giving them happiness, to really feel, may they enjoy that. May they not be parted from that which is giving them happiness. May they have happiness. When we see others, if we think, may they be free from suffering, may they not encounter anything that creates suffering. This is really something that is, I mean, we can be making virtue all the time just by looking at others. And if we really think about the way that we are doing it now, we maybe are not creating so much virtue, maybe even non-virtue. So here, these are the sorts of, as has been described, the causes that lead to these particular signs. And so we should try to ourselves train in them. So here in verse 196, thus you should recognize that these are, in brief, the 32 signs that indicate a great lion-like person. And so here again, using this lion-like reference, as we indicated above, it is because the Buddha teaches in accordance with the way that things are. He is fearless. There's no sort of fear or trepidation.
Oh, to the chance of Jutani Buddha, that the Judah Jebashe Sara, or the Yabu Kimbat Sungudwa. Niti Julia Kubersala, or the Jutuzulia, Sosoget, and the Jutu Saveta, and the Samutan de Yangoachene. The Jula Kubersala, Jutube Seance, or the Deku, Tube today, Devada, Teletani, Debusanji, Sansan to Tugu, something. Debi Kebala, Malam de, the Druba shows of the Malam Jamne, or Tentation Yabu, or some Gora. You Aranzo Milia Pata, the Chicarishina, get a take Sanji Yakusu Dube, and some Busum Justani, the picture to the Drube Chula Dugora, or take Drube Chula Ducha Maoba and Martin de Druba shows of the Malam Jamne Abu, or some Gora. Reception which Mulam Lepshabusato Gora. And said, Sanjay to the Kibu Chamber Sanchez on the Kibu Chamber Sans on the Kasataba membership, Kibu Chamber, somebody Shibana, and it's Hansagora. The chair said, they sent to the Eritrean quarter to some Shishi Chagrat, and they did not shake Mesodwa. The Chita got chance to the Gui, you ended about us, Sugui, and then the shed the Gora. To do that, and it tilly and then get sent in the Ansagora. And a charge in a Semoden donum torda somonen jimche di semodo maabota ro tato zo mengu bata sera leche shegra yeso tendo zo tilia kashe shegri peche segra peche de kibu sembo sombar shebe sende ba chönjelia sende ya ngon se debre suso el tilia botla peche segra de peche ne shela pa kibu sembo to akoya pa sen sambu sumjustanies peche sambu kechusjera de ngondo gen sawato zo ne korana traga panse kyapshora 안되게 될로 먹었네. 대대비 시다라. 배제 상부 자주네 잠배 유튜브에도 배제 상부 자주데 가르쳐 거스네. 또 샬라 잠바다 저와다 샬이야. 나르 미게 따다데 르당하게 거네 자와치당 전에 거저들에 팬버트에서 왔지 전에고 구수그 연대도 강가 두고라. 그래서 서고 그치 따다다 치다다 되게 요마무요도 대줄을 때서 배제 상부 자주네 잠배 교통 레셔 또데 잠바 심제 대화다 텐데고 산에 대외 유카세 소송원에 주바이나티 이 줍식 돌려도 거라 배제도 주로 롭자로 세서 잠바 잠배 거네 샬라 따와다 잠배 거네 샬라 페도 주에서네 배제 루베 줄려도 오네 네 쇼니 마우스 도바에 개버 줄마 대시에네 마무시 사도 네 개벌 셰그메 소래 다들 내려와 donda sugu chöje ge kuy yo der she ge dwa ni na ne ja zo longu da da de wo le yo ma do a de te shi ne ho ya o ta ya o te shi de pe je to ka ga ya le cha be se ge ta wa la so bo lu ji ko ne shen la ta da ge kyo ma bu sa ro wa te le te ne lu ji yo de to sa ge dwa 어쩌죠 다 누나를 계시 개버 여 마운트도 개벌 디시에 매서 야 되지로
So here then Nagarjuna says to the king as it came in this verse 196 that you should know well these various causes and make an effort, or you should know well the kinds of signs that and what are their causes. So make an effort to accumulate those causes and make a kind of dedication or make prayers that the virtues that one has accumulated will go toward that particular result. So this is his kind of encouragement to the king to train in these. And then next, we turn to in verse 197. A kind of explanation of why he doesn't give a full listing of the 80 secondary signs. So here it reads, then the 80 secondary signs have love as their concordant cause, but concerned that this treatise will be too long, I will not explain them to you. So here, when we are talking about, and sometimes it's translated as like the marks and the signs, or the signs and the secondary signs, these are signs of a great being. It's a physical manifestation of the kinds of qualities that they have developed over a long period of time. So we don't need to, as it would be too sort of long, but these signs are indications of being a great being, are indications of the kind of virtues that one has accumulated in order to then have these particular marks on the body, or signs and secondary signs. So the various kind of secondary signs tend to be things that accompany the main kind of primary signs. Like there are things like having sort of the color of the nails as being like a copper or a red kind of a color and so forth. And I won't list all of them out here, but if one is interested looking at the 8th chapter of the Ornament for Clear Realizations, this has a list then of all of the 32 major signs and the 80 secondary signs. And so it is the case that these 80 secondary signs have love as their concordant cause. It is by developing this kind of way of looking at others with love, thinking may they have happiness and the causes of happiness that then lead to a physical mark on the body. So here it is by way of developing such good qualities that concordant sort of results come about. And so here, fearing that it would be too long to list out all of the 80 secondary signs, he basically says that you can learn them from elsewhere, but one should make an effort at the common cause of these, which is by, again, having love and compassion for other sentient beings, we then act respectfully with our body. And that kind of attitude and actions leads to these signs as physical manifestations on a Buddha's body.
Oh yeah, I do. And then man de share to kolu jwe ke bu to solia and the so jebe chat and the yores. It is Sanje le yebe chen gosere sembito to jagma res keba de share to. Oh, debu keba and it ju keba jagma re. Pesh chatan de jagma ti tenje sum de share to. Otima losh. College Tamjala did I ever do majors, college to Zulia, and it's Sambu, some just to your days, and that she Sambuchi, your days, or do make yes. In a Sanjay Chan down Dagma race, the career sena, Amada, Mitucho, never you my Mitucho, Damada Cabayore, Tada, and Zemajili Cabayores, and it's a sable. We said there wouldn't day Cabayores. Sanjay Namji Charme Bus, Sanjay Chan out to the college Cabo to Zuga, and it's hand to Zoko, Gentuche, Yoma Race, Ishedwa. Yeah, what is Lona?
So then next, it turns to discussing how it is that wheel-turning monarchs have similar signs, similitudes of these signs, but how they are not the same as that of a Buddha. So this then is divided into 3 points, talking about the difference in terms of the result, their causes, and giving an example. And so the first of these, the difference in terms of the result, comes in verse 198. Although wheel-turning monarchs have these signs and marks, they have similar signs on their bodies, their purity, beauty, and luster cannot compare with a Buddha's. So although it is the case that wheel-turning monarchs, as a result of their merit, have these kinds of signs that are similar to those of a Buddha, the purity of those, the sort of beauty of them, and the luster cannot compare with a Buddha's.
Ah, Taibisha, Royat. College Sandani, College Cabus handed us order. College Cabus, Nimat was a pigeon of Hudua. That's the man of today captured me says it in this chamber go Koragi. Usually, I lived with Namsako, Majewale, Kawa, Net on Gobasi. It's a Namsan Talia, because Sanja that in the picture chamber go check out to Guiora. In the Kora go so put to Siji Abo, some shit, some baby. That's how we are said. Oh, Tindesinico, College Cabo said, you want to catch you good. That was Shemo. Oh, Chetane. That college Cabo said that in Dragma rest shadow. College said an epic sambu, Kandachi, Tuabola, Semtawe, Yana Chile, Young Shevas, College Cabo said to Yamakora Sanjay within Jane, and it tell it Tabakene, Usu Jane, Tabake, but yes, Sonamla, Sonam Chachi, and Nikona to Chanta what they go at Esagora. Oh, Tindation what they say. Sanjay Shandat in the Roa, or Kandakan and Jane, Sanjay Santos of Kanga Jane, this Sonam San, Tabake, but you son of Jane, who Chama Mauba, College Cabo said to say, it is Chanta what is you go at Esagora.
So here then it says, although wheel-turning monarchs have, sorry, the next verse then reads, each of the signs and marks of a wheel-turning monarch are said to come from one cause, clear faith in the king of sages. So here, when it comes to kind of wheel-turning monarchs, and we don't need to get too much into this, they have special sorts of qualities, like in terms of being able to be victorious in battle without sort of even employing weaponry and so forth. But again, we don't need to get too much into it. However, the signs and marks that on their body are said to come from a single cause due to their having clear faith, having faith in the king of sages, having met the Buddha in the past, seeing the kind of marks and signs on a Buddha's body and generating that sort of clear faith is the cause that then leads to their, as a wheel-turning monarch, being adorned by these various signs and marks.
Oh yeah. Keba chewa Katrina soda. Chikdu sakbe kewe jang se. Sanje babu nyak che jang. Keba nyoba mayi no se. Kulu jewe keba tozo ke chen tuwe tentrawe kyu. Keba chewa chikli aba sakbe kewa tozo jang. Sanje je babu bugaro chik dupchi ke sonam ten dup tuku ma re se gara. Keba chewa Katrina chikdu sakbe kewa kang se. Kulu jewe keba chen dupchi ke kewa sakbe bati keba mambu sakba ina. Ye kyu teke sanje je babu bugaro chiga keba ke tuku ma re se gara. Sanje babu nyak che jang keba nyoba ma ina os ya. Tuluka jatam bati.
So then verse 100, or actually 200 here, the first half of it says, but even were such virtue to be uniquely amassed over 1 billion eons, it would not be sufficient to produce even a single pore of a Buddha. So here, the kind of causes that lead to a wheel-turning monarch having these similitudes of signs on their bodies, and really they're not comparable to those of a Buddha, but are said to arise from that kind of clear faith. But even were such virtue to be uniquely amassed over 1 billion eons, even if you develop that kind of faith, it's not sufficient to produce even a single pore, even like a single hair pore of a Buddha's body.
This one.
This-
Aderita. Nima kata chikdira.
oh,
Nima namje weche basa. Nima ke jiden kam chama sewar chibe weche tugara. O meche namda pandawas. Simbu meche kondate, simbu meche matsib sisraji tostos toyere tuwa. O te kunye sam drase richi mato. Nima dege chene jambuli kanga sewar chigare. O korang sobo chazan ke setu mara taas drawa zamchi mato. Ina shipere sewara. O nima namge weche ba meche namda pangdawa tozinda imba samdragade sera. Sanje namje chayane kole jowa namdan ras kole jowa la sanje da chay yore sede chayta zeba chi lun zeji drawa samje yobola sigri mato yuta shelu ta kange chane draya yo mare se kita ko zeba yobe chane drawa sam esha res ora o tindu do ya tislan.
So then this continues this verse where it says then, the brilliance of the sun has some similarity to a firefly. So when we think about the sun, this is something that is extremely powerful. It has a light that is able to like dispel the darkness of all of the worlds when the sun rises. But something like a firefly, I mean, a firefly like at night maybe can light up not even fully its own body, but create a little bit of light. And we can say that those two are similar in both having light, right? The light of the sun is as similar in that to the light of a firefly, in that they are both light. But we really wouldn't call those the same thing, right? And so similarly, likewise, the signs of the Buddha are slightly similar to those of a wheel-turning monarch, but really there's no actual comparison, just in the same way that the brilliance of the sun couldn't be sort of rivaled by a firefly. So too, the signs of a fully enlightened Buddha are similar to those of a wheel-turning monarch, but really not, those of the wheel-turning monarch can't compare. There's a similarity on the surface, but not in terms of the causes that are necessary for accumulating those and so forth.
that's matter. Liu San Tambas, Ramboche Chawale, Pema, Chawale, Pema, Shawate, Liu Niba Osa, Nikabula Tamba, Ramboche Chawale, Mundo, Tangele, Tunde, Pemar, Tamba Shadow, Liu Niben Jabat, Liu Niben Jabat also. Oh, Mundo da, Nele, Pema Tamba Shadow. 니가 전에 시대 시대 이거 당연히 들들 시대 또 상계지 산 도주 시에서 상계주인데 얘네 다르다 탐지 kim번이랑 얘네서 봐 어디셔 빨리 웃음 받으래 우리 다 뒤치는 야 오메다 다 단단 되셔야 돼야 알레 뜻이라나
No, no. So then here, not really in the English, but that then finishes the second chapter of the Precious Garland. I don't. The sound is getting a little strange from my side. Hopefully that can be resolved. But so this then says that out of this instruction or advice to a king called Precious Garland, this then is the second chapter, which teaches in a sort of interwoven way, higher status and goodness. Now, here, meaning definite goodness at the end, the result is taught through those 32 signs primarily. And so that finishes in the second chapter. Dixon. Tanta Dixon. Again.
Hello?
Nye kerang kogidu. I think they turned off my sound to him, so I'm having trouble indicating that I have actually finished that section.
And now we're ready to go on. I think you may have turned off Katrina's sound.
Yeah, kogidu, kerang kogidu. Dixon game. I think they muted me over there, so I don't know what to do.
Katrina's ready to go on.
Kogidu. Finished, and that's why we're having a little bit, but I hear him just fine, so. Yan kirang salpo kogi. 수로난 게. I think maybe to correct that audio trouble, they muted me, but now that's some trouble. Yeah, I can hear just fine. 다 딕송겐라 숭로나.
아, 그거 있어. 그거도 와.
거기
그거도. 그런 자들 그거요 말. 그런 자들 말고는 되요.
건서 거기도. 건성에 거기.
Dipon Losalin, can you hear Shavasti Abbey? Can you please give an indication?
Yeah, see, they've muted their sound because of that interference, I think, that was coming.
Yeah, we're messaging them, but we're getting no response.
I think he's concerned that you can't hear me. And he obviously can't hear me, which creates a little bit of trouble, but as long as Travasti you're able to hear, there shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, we can hear, and we're writing them repeatedly.
I'll
Letting
go
them know
measure.
that we can go ahead.
How to indicate that? I don't know sign
Oh,
language
달력서.
in Tibetan.
야, 야. 아, 그렇게 넘나요. 다단단 가지고 내셔도 해상부 소주 땅에다 배제 상부 제주도 시에서 이 수구 산재 꾸들이야. 수구다 수구시 니용거라. 꾸들이야. 수구들이야. 근데 롱구다 주구시 니용거도. 근데 롱주 쪽에 꾸다 대시거라. 그게 롱주 쪽으로 시에서 롱주 쪽에 꾸려야 해상부터 또 사게 어레시 이시거도. 롱구다 주구시 주구다 수구시 니시거라 산재 꾸들이야. 수구들이야는 롱구다 주구시 니시거라. 단대한테 태바 친구 쇼를 산재 좀 된데 산재에서 담부대 그 롱궁어 산재고로 그남저 처음만보사 안에 고라한테 좋아 옆에 최송사게 뒤져도야 똑바토로치 아니 야 자세 파바줄 아니 산재 고라 때바 장미수도 처사네 악배 신금 롱주 쪽배 구세 원미시 또고배 신금세 대주구라 텔리아 아니 산재고 산재고로 악배 신금리 아니 산재 고라게 때바 장미수도 사베 소남다 일라테네 악배 신금디 두 에네 코르도서 장신 파바 샤다시 일 산재고요 때바 신부셔나 데 산재 좀 된데 자갈 산재 텐데 셰데 콘 제바 템베스라 이 제바 산재 롱주 쪽에 고응어바 쪽에 산재네 쭈베시도 잡을리 가서 갈 쭈베 쭈고라 텔로 쭈고 시고라 이 쭈고나네 초지 쭈고 세더라 초지 쭈고 소위 쭈고 껴 쭈고 세 쭈고를 가서 시고라 얘네는 산재 좀 되는데 초지 쭈고스는 산재 주된 감로 산재변 제바잖네 최송발에 소반 제바 중이 제게테절로 초지 쭈고시고라 이 마인게 소위 쭈고세라고 아니 배 리다다부터 데레 쭈고 요거라 저리 껴 쭈고세라 쓰고라 어디에 가서라 산재 좀 되는데 태바신부 중원에서도 산재 좀 되는데 산재 사례를 당분에 상계 사내는 지denje 감들이야. 주베주석으로 다티 농지 속에 꾸되게 주베주데 상계 제반제다 까와제다 뜻수고라. 뒤를 봐도 상년에 개사를 했으라. 아이나야 상계 좀 된데 농구 주베르스도 남바 초식한테 관계 개ling 맞다. 대과 첨부를 맞다. 현대 상계 좀 된데 주베르스도 민원에 말해서라. 저도 제게를 지대서 근데 담겨라. 이런 민원에들아 미션에 주베르요 거라. 되고 상계사를 내네. 제반제네 그 자물린들이 까쳐야다 되게 제반제를 봐도 있어요라. 되게 농구 수구들라 농구다 주군이셔. 네 주구들라 이시 주구다 원이고 있어요라. 이시 주구도 캠바데 남예들라 이시 주구서라. 원이고 써야 될 것도 정말 빵바시오라. 영문보다 실제 집에 세배서도 딱 봐도 샤워랬고 세배 셈스도 메타버렸더라. 남자들이더라. 영문보다 실제 집에 네가 세배 셈스는 메타버려 남자들이더라. 세바스도 빵바스 티코라잖아. 뒤체를 요마라. 그래 원이고서 당신 남다가 찾기면 원이고 루분 남다가 찾기면 원이고. 셈지 정말 빵바다. 내가 쌤그 중요해 줄알아. 뒤도 이전에는 농구다 뜻을 생산 무슨 뜻합니다. 뜻을 이시에요라. 뜻을랍나.
So here, before we then turn to the third chapter, which is sort of gathering the accumulations of enlightenment, just in reference to these 32 major signs and the 80 secondary signs, these are qualities of the form body. So in general, we can speak about the bodies of the Buddha, and here I'll use the word, the English words, the form body and the truth body of a Buddha, or the Rupakaya and the Dharmakaya. And the Rupakaya, or the form body, is further divided into what we normally refer to as the enjoyment body, or the Sambhogakaya, and the emanation body, or the Nirmanakaya. Now, according to the Mahayana, as we see it described in Mahayana texts, the Buddha initially achieved enlightenment in the nature of the Sambhogakaya, or that enjoyment body, and did so in a pure realm. The pure realm of Akanishta is the site in which the Buddha first attained this state of enlightenment. And it's really due to having accumulated merit for 3 countless eons that then establishes that pure land, as well as the retinue of all Mahayana practitioners, bodhisattvas, and so forth, when a Buddha attains enlightenment. Now, as for his enlightenment in India and so forth, according to the Mahayana text, they would say that, well, the emanation body of a Buddha is something that came to demonstrate the process of enlightenment. So this emanation body, the Buddha has at that time already achieved Buddhahood, but is showing us, is demonstrating through this emanation body, the 12 deeds and so forth, the process by which we can follow the path of the Buddha. And so here, when it comes to others might look at the Buddha, again, this is a Mahayana kind of perspective, and say that, well, it's not suitable to say that the Buddha wasn't an actual human being who came to India and actually achieved enlightenment. To say that it was somehow like a sort of an apparition or an emanation is not suitable. But according to the Mahayana, the Buddha was already enlightened, had already attained that in the nature of the form body, the Sambhogakaya, or that enjoyment body, and then emanates this kind of form in order to demonstrate to us, to show the path of like renouncing the household, engaging in austerities and so forth, in order to lead us as well. So here, when it comes to that form body, it is divided into the enjoyment body and the emanation body. And the enjoyment body is that which is marked with those various signs and minor signs. And then we have the Dharmakaya, or the truth body, that is similarly divided into two. We can talk about, and here, sorry that I go back and forth between the Sanskrit and the English, but the wisdom truth body, or the Jnana Dharmakaya, is referring to the knowledge, that omniscience of a Buddha. And then there is the nature a truth body, or the Svabhavivikaya, which is really referring to that elimination of those faults, the kind of elimination of all of those adventitious stains. And so here, this is something that, although because we achieve it through effort, we would say that it's something that is like created, but its actual nature is being uncreated. It is something that is permanent, that kind of absence of any sort of adventitious defilement. And when we speak about the nature truth body, we can talk about the kind of natural purity of that, its natural state as being freed from any of that kind of intrinsic existence and any of those defilements, and also the kind of purity which comes through the elimination of those adventitious defilements. So when we think about the bodies of a Buddha, this is just sort of an overview to give us an idea of what we're talking about in terms of the marks or the signs and the secondary signs, that is in reference to the form body, and in particular the enjoyment body of a Buddha.
Oh yeah, that's Sukuta Chukushera Sukusu Kansaga number 10 Jaco mean Jeju Yuba, Tujen Jay Yuba, Kansaga number 10, Sobu Yuba number 10, Sukusigora, Kusunga Supatene, Toyabitella Sukusigora, Telungu da Trugunira. And the Chugu to the Pangdoji and Del Sigora, to the Chugu to the Pangba Chungura, Yomoda Shijiba Pangba Pangba. And it Sebe Namji, number Tamji can be Shishingura. Oh, Tinidilia, Senator Quotation. Oh, Pangbata Tobe, and then you would tell a Chuguse. Chujiku, Rangi Musum to Jan, and Sanja Koran to Musum to Jam, but to Tuja Musum to Jake or Marwa. Oh, the Sugudi Shan, Tuja Lungus, number 10. Oh, that choose some Beka and then get to choose some Timana Karikari, not so but 2 or 3 or. Oh, this is what. That's Sugutella Lunguta Truguniche. Lungu said, Tagbe Singam Shungwet, never Nanden Sugu said that Namji Kondusha segmentation, which it is a corner. Never Nanden Sugu Tatu tell Longjo Sobekusera. Never Nande. Chang Eva, the San Sambusum Jusang, the Peja Sambu Jeju, Tamjak Trevor and Dangor, Chang Evas. Any doing Evas, 2 coaches in Matumba to Tagbe Singam to Sugar. And the core neighbors, a core chance Papa Shada. Korangaman and Drawa Yebe Tuja to the Mancha, Yasa Tumble Lepsan, Pagbe Kansan Jura Tezu de Tavishin delicate Toguara. The core neighbor Pagbe Kansa Shachi. Maradun Sanjay Jumde de Tagalpetu Shenda, Mambuyara, Sosuki with the Mambunya Duranjitinde Yomada. Core chance Papa Shada go neighbors. Sure neighbor, sure they take what Shimbu Bashir Chusungura. Take one member that today choose Songu Omar, Songo say Omarwa, Jansi Papa Janja to the church on Saturday. This one the take what you be chewed by Shisungora. Oh, they never had this. Doing about 2 coaches in Maton by the Shuba this way. Doing about Chang Eba and a career, Nang ever, never meet the book of a single corner Shuba than that. Oh, the Nicare. Doing about Chang Eba. Oh, calling about it, chewing about it. It's almost away. Oh, thing about a dance. Tanda coaches in Maton by the shoe, chance and some you say. Juveco dinning ever got a Mendembe Sugusira. Sure, take what some Bosungure, take one member Sungure, Kaina Sungura. Oh, need chance some Bosum San Cashin Dengue or Medenga Yungara. Oh, thing about a Mendembe Suguta do Sigda. Oh, this is Labna. Teaching, I didn't do it.
So here, I should also just, I forgot to mention above that in particular, the Buddha who demonstrated enlightenment and coming to the world was not just an emanation body, but a supreme emanation body. And there are different types of emanation bodies, ways in which the Buddha can appear in physical forms to lead others, even as like an animal or various objects and so forth. But here, when we think about in general the division between the form body and the truth body, the form body of a Buddha is that physical aspect, is they're appearing in the form of a person to be able to lead others. So that again includes the enjoyment body and the emanation body. Those two are the form bodies of a Buddha, whereas the Dharmakaya or the truth body is really the qualities of the abandonments and the realizations of a Buddha, the kinds of qualities that have come through eliminating all faults and developing all knowledge. And those qualities are not something that can directly interact with other sentient beings, with disciples. And so therefore the Buddha needs to be able to take on a physical form in order to lead others. And when we speak about the Sambhogakaya or the enjoyment body in particular, this is for those who might not be familiar, that there are five sort of certainties in terms of this Sambhogakaya. So the Sambhogakaya or the enjoyment body is referred to the sort of form body of a Buddha that has those five certainties, whereas an emanation body does not have those five certainties. So for a Sambhogakaya or an enjoyment body, the place, it is certain that this enjoyment body is in a pure realm, is in particularly Akanishta. And this kind of body of a Buddha, this form body, also has a certainty in terms of, and sometimes these are listed differently, but certainty in terms of those signs marking the body. Now, there is one that Gendon mentioned called the certainty of the teacher, and that was substituted for the certainty of having these signs. But regardless, the certainty of the retinue, the third of these five certainties, is that it is only bodhisattvas, and particularly high-level bodhisattvas, that are in the retinue of a Sambhogakaya or an enjoyment body. And it is certain that the teachings that they give will be Mahayana teachings. Again, the disciples are all Mahayana, and the kind of dharma that is taught as well for a Sambhogakaya is going to be exclusively Mahayana. And then there is certainty in terms of the time. The period of time is eternity, basically, that they will continue to turn the wheel of dharma eternally. Now, an emanation body is not endowed with those five certainties. It's not certain that they will have signs that others can see, like those signs that were described above. It is not certain that the teachings they give will be Mahayana teachings and so forth. So that's the kind of distinction then between the emanation body that lacks those five certainties and an enjoyment body that has those five.
Oh yeah. 당한 저 숨바 리우 숨바들이도 장주기 교소도 와서도 장주스도 라나메베 장주 산제가 있어다. 다디 교초도 초도고요라. 교초 수남지 초다 시기 초스니 연구봐. 얘는 제부들이라고 수구다 된데 줄 야서거라. 난디만 던전 셔야될 던전 같이 셔기도 이 subject도 넘어고 셔가 주로를 진기라. 다 초세대 간제질이 그래서 수남지 초다 시기 초여라. 초순 줄수세. 이제 내부 관계 초세대 내부 거래 초래. 수남지 초대 거래 규칙거래 시기 초대 거래 규칙거래 세거라. 수구다 출근 조직 차네 셔가. 내부 관계 초에 맞으도 내부 출구다 수구 조직 초달라. 이 수남지 초대 시 초연 거라. 근데 초니지 그래. 손이 소발라 기루메자 손이 사야 돼. 산제가 수구다 추구듯이 교래 기루가 메자 준주세제. 다들 다른 분의 삼사 기루 마셔서 준주 삼구레시도. 손이 수남지 초진 오가래. 또 수군듯이 이 시기 초진 오가래. 또 추군듯이 준주시도. 근데 손이지 야라 손이를 건데 요래서 초속발라 팽이죠. 순남대시 초사발 때는 팽이 주구다 수군 조조 어디고도 셰도 알리우디게 셰. 야 티질람난트.
So then, turning to the beginning of the third chapter, and again, we are looking some at this commentary by Gyaltsabje just to give some context. And so this then is talking about gathering the accumulations for enlightenment. And here it's referring to unsurpassed enlightenment. How does one then go about training in the two collections that are the cause for unsurpassed enlightenment? So here there are going to be a number of different headings, and we'll read them out, but don't get too worried about following them exactly. So first is how does how do these become collections or accumulations, and what are then the results that come about from those? Really referring to what does this accomplish? What leads to the form body of a Buddha? What leads to the truth body of a Buddha, and so forth. And then there is advice to not be sort of lazy or self-deprecating with regard to the accumulation of the two collections. Like, we shouldn't think, oh, that's too much, it's too far, it's too long, but rather we should pursue this with a joyous effort, with diligence. And then there is kind of what are the nature of the two accumulations, what are the branches of those, and then what are the kinds of benefits that arise from accumulating these two collections. Really the benefits being those two bodies that we achieve.
Oh yeah, that source juices nambutel ba denjendab shije shegdo yebulia da de sunam de shi so gol shegin is nyembar kuache. Ne sunam je so tayeba chushe. Ishije so tayebe chushe. Dinil ten jebu ne chugu de so kandes do gures ti ko shere do. Ya dichilamna.
So then, as for the first topic of how these become the accumulations, this is divided into encouraging the king to listen, talking about how the accumulation of merit is limitless, talking about how the accumulation of wisdom is limitless, and therefore how the result of those two is limitless as well.
Oh yeah. That then the delia tamadele sumde che so. Sunam je so tayeba ishije so tayeba. Dinijin debu ti chungure she sum sherwa. Oh tina ne ti want to chene. Ane karishe do sena. So we want to chene oti sum shegores. Lana mebe chanju je kyu choni su debes. Lana mebe chanju su so de tu shane ni nan de do. Sunam je so de shi choni su debe. Di shege ade se de ma shede wa. Lunga ge le te tabuda. Dena sanje je ko ba tomne sen te tabu chen do juro she ge sonam chizam ke da do juro ma she be te che banes ore ta tamalya she te lunga ge le te tabu da dena ne sanje je ko ba tomne sen te tabu da demba jurgre se tal she sarwa sonam chizam je tedadu jura mashebe tishegres sonam kaje sane ene sukun jurgure ishi topgure ti yeske bandine shegres wara ya tejilana.
So then first exhorting the king to listen, and really we have then how the collection of merit is limitless and how the collection of wisdom is limitless, and how then the results of those two are also limitless or infinite. Those are the three main topics, but it begins with the kind of exhortation to listen to the king. And so here it has been explained the kind of causes in terms of the main causes that lead to those three levels of enlightenment, but here particularly unsurpassed enlightenment. And so here the kinds of the two collections that one gathers to attain that is what is going to be described here. So like if one is endowed with these types of actions, right? Like if we do this and that with our body and speech, age, then one will attain the various kinds of signs of the Buddha, right? That's what was just explained. But it does not explain it in terms of just exactly how much merit is necessary. And so then what is the reason for that? It's going to then describe it in this first verse.
뭐야? 다 솔로가 당부들이다. 저는 소남 삼지 메캬블레스. 지대로 상계 생중 와서 소남 삼지 메캬바라. 와. 소남대 시초 삼지 메캬발 때네. 상계 소남제 초 삼지 메캬발 때네 생상부 수구두구라. 이시기 초 삼지 메캬발 사발 때네. 네 수구두 두구라. 어제시에서 소남 삼지 메캬블레 지대로 상계 생중 와서 티시 택바 첨부 롱체레 택바 첨부 더 값소네 송바디 될 시행이 개부처럼 샘버드서라 개부 첨부 티시 선세 티시 서바쇼스 센슈스 님버고 티시도 하야.
So then, turning to the first verse here, 201. Great King, listen to the way in which the signs of a Buddha arise from an inconceivable amount of merit, according to the great scriptures of the universal vehicle. So here, as was described above, the various kinds of signs of a Buddha is saying, please, King, listen to the ways in which those signs arise from an inconceivable amount of merit, according to the great scriptures of the universal vehicle, or the great vehicle, particularly like the Vinaya and so forth, that describes these.
뭐야? 아니 바티 소남 타입에 취디셔도 다들 가서 세메게 뒤셔고 세단 된바. 된바 담보랑아. 야. 아니 발라니셔. 뭐다. 세메게 뒤제고로 세단 된바. 된바어서 지당 체 장가시오 마트 뒤제고를 수치 dom네 체르체 시행에 송구라. 다들 전쟁을 중앙에 권에 송구도. 다 담보들 가르도세나 랑게소주 소남 알레 오디르 랑상게다 녀도다 랑상게든데요라 대조고 소남 송거라 랑게소주 소남 주르주르에 최제세 랑게라 소바 자좀바 토베게 소남데 에네 가제 사고이나 텐데 차르추 최게네 상게게 바부 부가데된 두고요데 세거라 랑게소게 소남 순주르에 소게 소게 투베원베 바부 부가 치좀 두바다스 티치셰도 아니 이디가래 바부 부가 탐제 루베 소남 경주르게서다 바부 부가 탐제 루베 소남데 야탐바가 쳐시게 아니 가려운 거라서나 아니 배제 찍도 그래서라 배제 찍도 그래서 되도록 배제 탐제 개배 소남 경주르게 생주 배제 탐제 개배 소남 가져서고 나티 야탐바가 쳐시게 아니 생주도 그래서라 생상 무슨 나네 찍도 그래서 저러 아니 생 탐제 개배 소남 동주르게 세대 창마 최솜세 창마 두제 소남 그때저 동다 수주라시게라 이소 배제 탐제 개배 소남 경주르게 체지 두셔라 다 탐제 개배 소남 동주르게 주부지 두고래서 주부도 두 체신다 창마 두배 소남 동주르게 주부지 두고래서 아니 주부지 개배 소남 동다 경주르게 숙도도 두고래서 어디봐도 지셔나 제텔레 소남 망아사 텔레 소남 망아사 어디시에도 야 되실랍나 인데 사소해 등매배 되게 디스 다 되려나 되려서
So here then, turning again, there are various topics, many different topics that are dividing, that divide into. But in terms of the way in which this accumulation of merit is infinite, is like incalculable, there's the actual explanation, and then teaching how it is that for the purpose of the minds of disciples, we say that there is some kind of a measure or a limit, even though this merit is really immeasurable. And so here, as will come in the next, we really know we're on our way out. In the next set of verses, so we have solitary realizers, right? Hearers and solitary realizers. And solitary realizers, the amount of merit necessary to attain that state, if one were to multiply that tenfold, that would be the amount of merit necessary for a single pore of a Buddha's body. And when we think then about the merit that would be necessary to accomplish all of the pores on a Buddha's body, and multiply that by 100, then that is the merit necessary to accomplish a single one of those kinds of secondary signs. And then the kind of merit that is necessary to accomplish all of the secondary signs, if one were to multiply that 100-fold, that's the amount of merit that is necessary to accomplish a single of the major signs. And if one is to take the amount of merit necessary to accomplish, and it says all of the major signs, but that's a little bit confusing, all of the major signs, and multiply that by 1,000, then that would be enough to accomplish this special hair, right? The swirl of hair between the brows, that supu. And then the amount of merit that is necessary to accomplish that, if one were to take that and multiply it 100,000 times, then that would be the amount of merit that is necessary for the Ushnishta, or the crown protrusion. And so here we will get into those in the following verses, but this is how the subjects are divided there.
Oh yeah, that is so, ne? Also shulka niba delete, oh tambut so shulka. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So just to be very clear about where we are leaving off, we finished the first verse of this third chapter, and we'll start with the second next week.
Thank you very much, Ginla, and especially thank you for the beautiful motivation today, very inspiring and practical to the place. Thank you, Katrina, for your translation. We'll be here again next week, 8 o'clock. We'll finish with some dedication.
May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and all spiritual friends who practice it have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Losang's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the 3 worlds always increase. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryatayami. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. In the snowy mountain pure land, you're the source of good and happiness. Powerful Tenzin Gyatso Chenrezi, may you stay until samsara ends.
Yeah, tuchen angela. Enjoy jema jeyo.
Recording stop.